Welcome to The Explainer. Look, I am absolutely thrilled to dive into today's topic because we are literally witnessing a massive fundamental shift in the world of artificial intelligence right now. We're moving way past the era of your standard chatbots and stepping right into the age of autonomous AI agents. So in this explainer, we're going to visually deconstruct exactly how these agents work, how they think, and how they execute complex workflows entirely on their own. It's really fascinating stuff. Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. We're going to cover demystifying the agent, the structural pillars, the execution loop, multi-agent ecosystems, and finally, we'll map out the levels of agency. Let's jump right in. All right, part one, demystifying the agent. To really grasp what this whole agentic paradigm is all about, we have to contrast it with traditional AI. So, think of your standard large language model as a highly advanced calculator. It just sits there waiting for you. You type in a formula, your prompt, and it spits out an answer. It completely relies on your continuous input to do anything. But an AI agent, that's more like hiring a personal accountant. You don't give it a step-by-step formula, you just give it a high-level goal, something like, hey, file my taxes. The agent creates its own plan, digs through your receipts, categorizes your expenses, and executes the entire workflow. The absolute key distinction here is autonomy. It doesn't just answer a question, it decides what steps it needs to take to get the job done. Moving on to part two, let's look at the actual structural pillars of an agent. To understand an agent, we basically have to break its brain down into manageable components. First up, you have the role and the objective. For an agent to actually be effective, it needs to role play. It needs a specific persona and a crystal clear objective. So you don't just say, be a helpful AI. You tell it, you are a senior data scientist. But to keep that persona on track, we need strict guardrails. I mean, if you build an AI-powered legal assistant, you absolutely cannot have it quoting outdated laws or just making things up. Guardrails are those hard structural limits that prevent the agent from hallucinating or going completely off script. Right alongside those guardrails is memory. Now, without memory, an agent would basically have the processing power of a genius, but the retention of a goldfish. It would start completely fresh every single time you talk to it. So agents use short-term memory to keep track of the current conversation context, but more importantly, they use long-term storage, often relying on things like vector databases and embeddings. This is huge because it allows them to learn, improve over time, and actually build cohesion across different tasks. Okay, so now that we have a brain, a plan, and memory, the agent needs hands, and that brings us to tools. A standard AI model sitting isolated on a server only knows what it was historically trained on. But when you give an agent tools, like the ones you see supported by frameworks like CrewAI, you empower it to actually interact with the real world. Tools are what allow an agent to dynamically search the web, read files on your local drive, fetch data from a live API, or even write and execute its own Python code on the fly. But let's be real, the real world is messy. APIs go down, websites change their formatting, code throws syntax errors. So a critical piece of this is how an agent handles failure. If a standard script hits an error, it just crashes, game over. But a well-built autonomous agent uses its guardrails in memory to self-correct. It actually reads the error message, realizes, oh, my previous plan didn't work, and it tries a completely new path to reach your objective. That brings us perfectly to part three, the execution loop, focusing on action and reflection. To really see how an agent moves and operates, we have to look at something called the REACT framework. REACT simply stands for reasoning and acting, and this is essentially the standard thinking phase for modern agents. Instead of trying to just instantly guess the final answer to a massive complex problem, the agent breaks the problem down into smaller sequential steps. It uses chain-of-thought reasoning, and it intertwines that logic with real-time external tool use. This loop right here is the true heartbeat of autonomous AI. It's a continuous, dynamic, non-linear cycle. It starts with a thought. The agent forms a hypothesis or decides on the very next step. Then comes the action. It actually fires off a tool. Maybe it runs a Google search. Next is the observation. It looks at the real-world data it just pulled in. And then it loops back and reflects. It asks itself, am I closer to the goal? Do I have the final answer? Or do I need to formulate another thought? And it just repeats this loop until the job is done. Over time, developers have taken these mechanics and built them into 5 core agentic design patterns to make these systems incredibly reliable in the real world. You've got the reflection pattern, which lets the AI review its own work to catch mistakes. The tool use pattern for gathering outside info. The react pattern we just talked about. The planning pattern, which forces the AI to map out a step-by-step roadmap before it takes a single action. And finally, the multi-agent pattern, which sets us up nicely for part 4, multi-agent ecosystems. This is where things get really next level. You might be wondering, why even use multiple agents? Well, because giving one single agent way too many tasks or flooding it with too much data actually ruins its performance. It gets confused. Think about a software development team. You would never ask one person to do literally everything, right? You have a product manager writing the requirements, a coder writing the actual script, and a QA tester checking for bugs. The exact same logic applies to AI. Specialized agents that talk to each other perform better every single time. The practical use cases for this kind of ecosystem are honestly mind-blowing. You can have a manager agent that takes a complex prompt from you, breaks it down, and delegates subtasks to a whole team of specialized agents. We're seeing this in automated content creation, entire multi-agent systems writing books, and advanced financial tools. Imagine having a currency analyst agent that uses a custom tool to fetch live exchange rates, analyzes the geopolitical news of the day, and then seamlessly passes all those insights over to a secondary writer agent to draft up a polished financial report for you. And finally, part 5. Let's look at the levels of agency and where the future is heading. We can track AI's evolution through 5 distinct levels. Level 1 is the basic responder. That's your standard chatbot. Level 2 is the router pattern, where the system can make basic, predefined branching decisions. Level 3 introduces tool calling, giving the agent the power to decide when to pull in external resources. Level 4 is the multi-agent pattern we just looked at, with manager agents coordinating a team. And at the very top, we have Level 5, the autonomous pattern. At this absolute highest level, the AI operates as a fully independent entity. A generator agent writes a piece of code or generates an output and passes it directly to a validator agent. That validator checks the work, provides feedback, and kicks it back to the generator to be corrected. This whole system iterates entirely on its own, generating, verifying, and refining its workflows. It's effectively acting as an independent AI developer, completely removing the need for a human to sit there and click continue at every single step. This shift from static, reactive chatbots to highly dynamic, autonomous agents equipped with tools, memory, and specialized roles is completely transforming how we approach work. The technology isn't just theoretical anymore, it's here and it's highly accessible. So the only real question left is, which level of autonomous agency are you going to integrate into your workflow first? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep experimenting with these tools, and I will see you next time.